Welcome back to Geopolitics today, where we dive into some of the most pressing global issues shaping our world. Today, we're unpacking a complex and critical topic, the potential for a US-Iran war and the broader geopolitical landscape surrounding it.
Wow, that sounds intense. But before we jump into that, could you give me a broad overview of what's driving these tensions? I mean, wars don't just happen out of nowhere, right?
Absolutely, that's a great place to start. At the heart of this discussion is the intersection of several key factors: the US dollar's global dominance, shifting alliances like the BRICS nations coming together, strategic maritime choke points, and the broader great power strategies that we see from countries like the US, Russia, China, and Iran.
Okay, so the petrodollar thing, that's about the dollar being the main currency for global oil trade, right? How does that factor into this?
Exactly right. The petrodollar system means that most global oil trade is conducted in US dollars. This gives the US significant economic and political influence worldwide, because countries need dollars to buy and sell oil. The system works smoothly when everyone views the dollar as politically neutral.
But I guess with events like sanctions on Russia, that neutrality kind of takes a hit.
Exactly. When the US applies sanctions like those on Russia in 2022, it reveals that dollar-based trade isn't always politically neutral. This erodes trust and pushes countries to seek alternatives, which is where the BRICS and the Eurasian integration come in.
The BRICS, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, right? So they're working together to reduce dependence on the dollar?
Yes. Though Iran isn't officially a BRICS member yet, it aligns with Russia and China economically and strategically. These countries are developing overland pipelines and rail networks that bypass traditional maritime routes dominated by US naval power. So, the US's ability to use sea power as coercion is less effective.
That's like if someone controls the main highway for trucks, but you build railroads and back roads that let you avoid them entirely.
Perfect analogy. And paired with this is control and contestation over maritime choke points, narrow sea passages, crucial for global energy trade.
Like the Strait of Hormuz, right? I've heard that's crucial for oil exports from the Gulf region.
Yes, exactly. The Strait of Hormuz sees about 20% of the world's energy exports passing through. Iran controls the strait and could theoretically impose de facto insurance tolls or even shut it down, which would seriously disrupt global energy supplies.
What about the Strait of Malacca? I heard that's vital to China's energy imports.
Spot on. The Strait of Malacca is the main maritime route for China's energy imports. It's a narrow choke point vulnerable to interdiction or blockades. So, if tensions increase, that route could be targeted, impacting China's energy security.
And how do sanctions play into all this? You mentioned something about tankers evading sanctions.
Yes, very savvy observation. There is a shadow fleet of tankers operating to help countries like Iran and Russia evade sanctions. These shuttle fleets move energy shipments in ways designed to obscure the end destination or ownership, but this creates potential flashpoints for conflict or escalation.
This is like a cat and mouse game on the oceans then. So how is the US responding to all this?
The US strategy is multi-layered. Their national defense strategy focuses on securing the Western Hemisphere, recalibrating alliances in Europe and Asia, economically constraining China, and revitalizing US defense manufacturing.
Revitalizing defense manufacturing? Does that mean making more weapons here at home?
Exactly. For instance, the Pentagon has even reached out to civilian automakers to convert assembly lines to produce munitions. It's an industrial push to ensure the US can sustainably supply its military-industrial demands in prolonged conflicts.
That's intense. What about tactical military measures?
The US aims to threaten or seize key maritime choke points to control energy flows and deny adversaries easy access. They're also pushing allies to increase their defense spending, a process called burden sharing.
So the US wants partners like Europe and Asia to pay more so America doesn't have to foot the whole bill?
Exactly. And when it comes to Iran specifically, the US strategy appears to focus on a three-pronged campaign, economically strangling Iran by blocking exports and sanctioning insurance companies, inciting internal unrest by exploiting ethnic minorities and border tensions, and physically pressuring Tehran through targeting utilities and supply chains to force a political settlement.
That sounds like a comprehensive and harsh approach. How does Iran respond to all this? What's their strategic advantage?
Iran has a few strong cards. Their geography is quite mountainous, which favors guerrilla warfare and makes it difficult for invaders to hold territory easily. Their military command is decentralized across provinces, making it harder to decapitate leadership.
Kind of like how difficult it is to conquer a mountain fortress, because attackers can only approach in small groups and defenders know the terrain better.
Exactly. They also use subterranean bases and have redundant infrastructure, increasing their survivability against bombing campaigns. Plus, Iran leverages proxy groups Hezbollah in Lebanon, Houthis in Yemen, Hamas in Palestine to conduct asymmetric operations without direct attribution.
So Iran fights not just in conventional wars, but also through these proxy networks, which can destabilize neighboring regions.
Right. This creates a layer of plausible deniability, making it complicated for opponents to retaliate directly without broader conflict risk.
Interesting. You mentioned internal political splits in Iran. How does that affect their strategy?
Iran's politics are split between a hardline clerical/IRGC faction, which is more ideological and militarily aggressive, and a more pragmatic secular bureaucracy aiming for stability and economic development. This dual structure creates mixed incentives and can sometimes slow decisive actions or cause competing priorities.
Like having two captains steering a ship in different directions, a recipe for complicated maneuvering.
Exactly. Now, zooming out a bit, if we look at key actors in the situation, the US, Russia, China, Iran, and Israel, they all have distinct strategies and strengths.
Could you break that down for me? It's a lot of players.
Sure. The US relies on air and naval power, the dollar, and global media influence, but faces internal political polarization and limited will for prolonged ground wars.
That's the classic Fortress America concept, powerful but cautious about foreign entanglements.
Right. Russia focuses on a Eurasian land corridor strategy. Because their access to sea power is limited, they use pipelines and rail to reduce vulnerabilities. They have large geography and manpower, but their economy suffers under sanctions.
So Russia's strategy is more about land-based connections and avoiding sea choke points dominated by the US Navy.
Exactly. China wants to avoid direct large-scale wars, tries to balance relations between powers, and aims to secure supply lines, especially maritime routes vulnerable at Malacca. It enjoys economic leverage, but is energy dependent on sea lanes.
That's like trying to maintain peace as long as your lifeline, energy imports, aren't cut.
Well said. Iran's strengths, as we touched on, include terrain, proxy networks, maritime leverage, and a decentralized form of warfare. Weaknesses are economic constraints and internal political splits.
And what about Israel? Where do they fit?
Israel focuses on regional dominance, pursuing a vision often called Greater Israel, and relies heavily on intelligence and alignment with the U.S. Their weakness is being constrained by broader U.S. commitments elsewhere.
Makes sense. So what do the predictions say about how these dynamics might play out?
There are several interesting forecasts. Domestically in the U.S., severe unrest could lead to unconventional political outcomes. A third Trump term with unpredictable timing is mentioned.
Wait, that's a huge political twist. So internal U.S. politics could shape foreign policy decisions a lot, huh?
Absolutely. On the Iran conflict front, a protracted multi-year war is expected, with the possibility of a U.S. military draft if ground operations drag on.
That would be a major shift for the U.S., remember. We haven't had a draft since Vietnam.
Right, and for U.S.-China relations, a grand bargain might be negotiated and accommodation preserving trade while managing rivalries. Several diplomatic summits are predicted.
That's a hopeful no-do way to keep competition from turning into open conflict.
Yes. Also, accelerating technological changes like AI surveillance and programmable digital currencies could greatly expand government control and surveillance capacities in the West.
That's a little scary, but also makes sense with the rise of digital IDs and central bank digital currencies.
Regionally, Israel might try to expand dominance if the U.S. retrenches. The contested city of Odessa in Ukraine remains a flashpoint, with Russia aiming to secure Black Sea access.
And East Asia?
There are risks around Taiwan reunification pressures, the vulnerabilities of the Malacca Strait, and North Korean opportunism, all potential catalysts for conflict.
Is there an estimated timeline for these events?
Some, like the Odessa situation, might unfold soon near term. Others, such as a potential decade-long Iran war or full AI state adoption, are medium to long term.
All this sounds pretty overwhelming. Do we know if Russia will escalate directly into an Iran conflict or coordinate with China?
That remains an open question, as does whether the U.S. can politically sustain a long-ground war in Iran, and how fast Western democracies will adopt these new surveillance technologies.
So many uncertainties, but clear trends.
Precisely. Operationally, the U.S. has ramped up naval interdictions and tanker seizures, known as Operation Southern Spear, and is repurposing industries. But no formal political decisions toward declared war have been recorded yet.
And about the draft, doesn't Congress have to declare war to implement that?
Yes. While there's talk of registration, the draft activation requires congressional approval, which is a political hurdle.
That's a key check and balance people often overlook.
Definitely. Before we wrap up, let's celebrate a few coin aha moments from our discussion.
Okay. First, realizing how critical the petrodollar system is and how sanctions shake that foundation was eye-opening.
Exactly. Also, the idea that countries are building overland routes as alternative pathways to bypass U.S. naval control is crucial for understanding Eurasian geopolitics.
And thinking of Iran's warfare as a mosaic of proxies, terrain advantage, and decentralized forces helped me see why a conventional invasion might be so challenging.
Those are all key insights. Remember, the geopolitical landscape is incredibly interconnected. Economic systems, military strategies, internal politics, and technological trends all weave together.
Thanks for breaking all this down. It's complex, but now feels more manageable. So key takeaways. The U.S.-Iran tensions are part of a larger shift challenging U.S. global dominance, especially through alliances and alternative trade routes. Maritime choke points are critical strategic assets. Iran's decentralized warfare and proxies complicate conflict, and technology and internal politics are wildcard factors influencing these trajectories.
Perfect summary. That wraps up today's deep dive. Stay curious, and we'll catch you next time on Geopolitics Today.
Can't wait. Thanks so much.